Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm pleased to welcome onto the stage John Jones, Head of Global Strategy for EC2 and Impact Computing at AWS. Please welcome John Jones.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is John Jones, and I don't get a chance to come to nonprofit conferences very often, but thanks to the Imagine team for inviting me out. It's a real privilege to be here. I run our global cloud computing strategy and go-to-market. And what that means is I usually spend most of my days talking to the biggest banks in the world, the biggest healthcare organizations in the world, the largest social media companies in the world. And what's super exciting to me is when I talk to them about the technology and tools available to them, I get to come to a conference like this and know that those exact same tools are available to all of you, that the people with the most capital and most resources in the world have access to. And so that's a really awesome way to democratize access to technology. For me, there are two things in terms of democratizing access to technology. There's the technology itself. Any one of you can go onto your laptop and spin up 1 million computers on AWS, which I think is super cool. There's also the access of the knowledge on how to use that technology. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today with the panel. And with that, I will invite the panelists up and we'll get started. Thanks everyone for coming. Before we get into questions, why don't you just spend a quick minute introducing yourselves and what you're focused on. Michele, maybe we can start with you.
Sure, thanks John. My name is Michele Mollinax. I'm the product and UX lead for the innovation team at the American Red Cross. And the specialty that I focus on at the Red Cross is conversational AI. So that means any sort of interaction, interface, conversation between artificial brain and human brain. And the innovation team at the Red Cross is sort of like this internal startup that we have at a very large organization, 20,000 folks across the United States. We're about a year and a half old. Technology function, not dissimilar to what you would find at Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. And our whole MO at the Red Cross is to go across the organization, the different verticals within our mission to prevent and alleviate suffering in the face of emergencies. So blood donation, disaster relief, which I think most folks are familiar with, training services, CPR training, that type of thing, international service and service to armed forces. We go across the organization, do problem identification with those leaders from the org, and then solution identification that leverages some sort of application of innovative applications of mature technologies as well as emerging technologies.
That's great. Thank you. Saeed?
Yes, can you hear me? I can't hear myself. So I'm Saeed Elnaj. I'm the CIO of the National Council on Aging. And the National Council on Aging, our mission is to help older adults 60 plus live a healthy and financially secure life. And we have, to that end, we have digital products. One of them is Benefits Checkup. It is the largest database of federal, state, and local government benefits and the eligibility rules for them. We help some 7.8 million people get access to $30 billion of benefits in the last few years. And our BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal is to help 10 million people by 2020, which we actually achieved just last June. And our next big, hairy, audacious goal is to help 40 million people by 2030. And that's a lot of people to help, which means digital and technology is at the center of it. In my spare time, I also write for Forbes.com. I write about the intersection of technology, business, and impact on society.
That's awesome. Thank you. Hend?
Hi, everybody. My name is Hend Alhinnawi. I'm the CEO of Humanitarian Tracker. We're a nonprofit forum that connects and empowers citizens using innovation and technology, and specifically for humanitarian events. We were among the first to combine crowdsourced information with data mining and artificial intelligence and apply it to conflicts, refugee needs, development and relief, disease outbreaks, and currently we are crowdsourcing the Global Sustainable Development Goals.
Great. Okay, for those of you who can't see, there's a big air conditioning unit up here that I didn't see over this beam until we got up here. So hopefully you can hear us. We can't really hear ourselves talk, but as long as the message gets out, we're in good shape. As we think about the innovation themes across the conference for the next couple of days, we really appreciate everyone coming in here to invest their time on behalf of your customers and your stakeholders. And on the theme of innovation, Michele, you work in the innovation group. And part of that in your scope, I understand, is evaluating and leveraging emerging technologies. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, absolutely. So on our innovation team, we have a dual focus: innovative applications of mature technologies, and this is especially true in our biomedical organization, so the collection and processing of life-saving blood products. On the other side of the fence is emerging technologies, and that's mostly where my focus is with conversational AI. Any good strategist will tell you that you need to meet your customers where they are, right? No brainer. And this isn't just good business sense. For us, it's an absolute organizational imperative that we find channels, we find mechanisms to meet our constituents, those who are receiving our services where they are in the time of need. So if our mission, if you think about it, is to prevent and alleviate suffering in the face of emergencies. If you think of the emotional profile of those constituents that we're serving, they're in distress, the need is extremely urgent. So what are the channels that are most effective to meet them? We've been exploring voice, so a subset of conversational AI, which is chatbots, voice skills, mobile assistants, things like Siri, Bixby, as well as IVR, interactive voice response. The reason we're so excited about conversational AI is because even though adoption is still low, it's still very much emerging, the velocity of adoption is quite fast. So 2-3 years from now, Alexa device, as you guys can obviously appreciate, is going to be as ubiquitous as our mobile apps. And if we're not there, already established in that space, it's going to be very difficult for us to catch up and enter that space to the point of efficacy where we can actually meet the need in a time of disaster, in an emergency response. So when we're thinking of which technologies that we need to move into for the mission of the humanitarian mission of the American Red Cross, it's very much with that in mind. How are we most able to effectively give our mission to our constituents? And emerging technologies, even when adoption is low, is very much part of the conversation.
And the theme of working backward from your customers to help bring solutions to them. Saeed, I know you spend a lot of time, and by the way, there's an Amazon working backward process tomorrow, a workshop on how we think about innovation at Amazon, so hopefully you can all attend that. Saeed, maybe you can talk about starting with your customer and working backward from that challenge and how that changes how you approach those challenges.
Yeah, so when you look at it, we're dealing with older adults, 60 plus. The general perception is that they're not technology savvy. Not many of the 72% or so have cell phones. They might have smartphones, but they don't use it for its smartness. So we have a lot of digital products that are direct to consumer, but the challenge is how do you deliver complex technology in simple ways, in ways that it's frictionless, it's easy, it's also affordable. So this is one of the challenges. I also, when I joined NCOA about a year and a half ago, and when I joined NCOA, I looked at our customers, and our knowledge of our customers was very general. We knew a lot about our customers from a statistical perspective. We knew from an average perspective, but we didn't know our customers as individuals. And we started a digital transformation journey. At the center of it is really knowing our customers as individuals and knowing their needs that change over time, and then delivering the right product through the right channel at the right time in their lives. And so that was sort of the motto of our digital transformation, and we started looking at how do we deliver that. So the very first thing we looked at is how do we get to know our customers? We need to know their names, their contact information, and so on. And obviously with that, there are a lot of data privacy challenges, et cetera. So we had to address those, overcome them, and we started talking to our customers, engaging them, and we started building also a middle tier layer. We called it the hyper-personalization layer, the customer segment of one to really know each individual and their specific needs. Then we looked at it and we figured out to get there, we needed to be in the cloud. We were in a private cloud. We rented our servers and so on. We were in a lot of risk areas, single points of failures, Disaster recovery was an issue for us. So when I looked at that, the very first step we needed to do is move into the cloud, and we moved into AWS in February of this year. We moved 95% of our assets to AWS. It was a journey with a lot of its complexities, but we're there now. And with that, we actually have a lot of tools for us that enable us to deliver our digital transformation. And I can talk more about it, but I'll let him talk a little bit more.
Sure, okay, thanks for sharing that. One of the interesting things about Saeed, your journey is you built a lot of this from scratch out of the gate. I know that Hend, you really started with a driving framework for a lot of your initiatives that you built it up around, one of which is the UN Sustainability Goals. I had a chance to give a talk a couple months ago in Iceland at a conference focused on the sustainability goals, and it's amazing how they bring people together to focus on solving problems. Maybe you can talk about that for a minute.
So the whole idea when we started Humanitarian Tracker was, how do you really empower citizens? How do you elevate otherwise marginalized voices from the crowd? Is it enough to give them a cell phone? Okay, you have a cell phone, then what? So creating this forum where people could submit, for example, in conflict, what's happening to and around them, then you're able to take those voices, verify them, make them public. So for example, I'll use the situation we dealt with in Syria. When the conflict broke out, there was no information coming out of the country. And so we created one of our flagship projects was Syria Tracker. And the goal of that was to give citizens on the ground a chance to tell the world what was happening to and around them. And then we layered a data mining and AI layer on top of it and gave a full perspective of what's happening on the ground. Then those voices were incorporated into official reports published by USAID, State Department, UN agencies, media outlets. Because our data is public, people can go use it. They could search for specific incidents. We also made it user-friendly and created dashboards. So say you're not data savvy and you just want to know about specific areas, you can then search it, narrow it down, and then consume that data. And based on that work, we were recognized in 2016 as a top 10 global innovation and showcased at the UN Solutions Summit. And that was really eye-opening because we got to meet so many people doing amazing things within their communities, but no one knew about. And based on that, we created the Global Action Mosaic. And it's basically crowdsourcing what ordinary people around the world are doing to make the SDGs a reality by 2030.
It's been a long journey for all three of you and your organizations to go from where you started to get up on stage. A lot of the folks in the audience here are still on that journey. Maybe I'll just open it up and ask about talking through some of the obstacles that you've overcome to get here, whether it's technology, organizationally. Anybody want to start there?
So I have some perspective from the Red Cross side. So our innovation team is only about, like I said, a year and a half old, and we've accomplished quite a bit in that short period of time. We've launched quite a few products, but we're still young. We're still a young organization within a very large, historic organization. And two of the challenges that we face are the same challenges that all of you would face in the nonprofit sector or the public sector is a lack of an abundance of time, right? That's not a concept that any of us are familiar with. You know, we're strapped for resources given the nature of our work, and that's something that we have to work with as well as this urgency around the work that you do. So at the Red Cross, again, our mission is to alleviate suffering in the face of emergency. So it seems like every single day is a bit of an emergency. And how do you have a conversation about innovation and using technology to disrupt the way that you're doing things, how you employ your mission when you are strapped for time, when you're strapped for resources, when you're two heads down every single day? One of the things that we've done at the Red Cross is set up this team. So there's a small, very focused group of people that are working towards this, but we are still part of this organization with those imperatives. So we have to do a lot of education, a lot of entrepreneurship, evangelism across the organization. It's one thing to say, okay, we're going to build a cool chatbot, or we're going to build this AI model that's going to look at whatever data set. If you're not able to go within the organization and make sure that you're developing new processes around this disruptive technology, then it's not very useful. So a lot of our time is spent coalescing support for the work that we're doing, educating our colleagues on the importance of it, and then providing whatever support we can to them to make sure that they're able to utilize whatever products come from our team.
Do you find that people are surprised that there is an innovation team within the American Red Cross?
Folks within the Red Cross are not surprised. I think folks who are outside of our organization who learn that we're doing this at the American Cross are a little bit surprised, but it takes very little convincing for them to realize the potential in this type of work, right? We're a huge organization. The data that we have is largely untouched, so there's a mass opportunity there. And the work that we do, that everybody in this room does, is so important. So when we realize disruption is not something for just large companies. It's for everyone. Like you were talking about the democratization of technology, that's very true for us as well. So there's a bit of a surprise, but it's very easy to see what the business case is when you see the potential for good here.
Yeah, I wanted to chime on this one. So it's really hard to make things simple, especially when you try to deliver technology to older adults. So one of the challenges is how do we engage our customers when they have cell phones, but they have smartphones, but they don't use it for smartness? How do you engage them? So we went on a journey. We looked at mobile apps, but we all know that we are in the post-mobile app era. How many of us use more than 10 mobile apps a day? A lot less than that, probably. So older adults are even less likely to use mobile apps. So then we discovered that maybe we should try with simple technologies such as SMS and texting. And we started a pilot project that actually was very successful. You can ask simple questions. Have you applied for your benefits? Yes or no? And the answer is it's simple. Then did you receive your benefits? How much benefit did you receive, etc. So we found that to be a very engaging and successful channel. And now we're scaling it into a full project. So that was one example. The other thing that's challenging when we talk about innovation is that I think we as humans were wired to be risk averse. We just don't want to take risks, and especially at work. And innovation actually requires the exact opposite, is to take risk and to accept failure as a likely outcome. And so especially us in the nonprofit world, we tend to even be more risk averse. So really trying to take that step and to encourage people and create the culture, as you talked about it, of people being able and wanting to take risks, that's not something that is easy and simple. We all want to be successful, and we don't want to be shamed in front of our customers. And the thing from my perspective was to do is to set a goal that I knew probably we will not likely meet. And then we actually failed at it, and then the team realized that if I can fail, they can fail too.
Thanks for sharing. And a lesson that the audience can learn from in your experience?
I think that I remember myself and my team talking when we first started Humanitarian Tracker, and we were searching for the next shiny new thing. What's the next shiny new thing? And sometimes the next shiny new thing, the very innovative, cutting edge, is something that's already been tried in another field that you can just take and adapt to, for example, crises and conflicts. And it took us a few rounds to try to, okay, do we build this? Do we add this on top? How is this going to work? And then somebody had suggested, well, this worked in disease detection. Why don't we take it? It was 99% accurate in detecting disease. Why don't you take that and apply it to conflict and see if we can do it? And sure enough, we did. So running after that shiny new thing, I hear it all the time, and sometimes it's just taking a step back. There's already really cool things happening around us, and just being able to adapt it. That's super innovative. The second challenge that I feel like we're still coming up against is this idea of data sharing. You don't want to be on the bandwagon that you don't share your data. But when you're actually trying to collaborate or partner with an organization, say, listen, we're twice as powerful if we share and we know what you're doing and you know what we're doing where, and we can work together. And that, like Michele said, that cultural hump of sharing data has been a hard one to overcome. They come around eventually, but it takes some work.
You can share data, you can share processes, you can share best practices on your technology adoption journey. None of you come from organizations where the world will look at you and say, technology is the core of what you do. It may be at the core of what enables you to do what you do. How do you get through that overcome that knowledge gap where even if you have access to the technology, getting your organization to use it the right way or figure out these best practices, how do you go about doing that?
So try not to fit a square peg in a round hole, for one. And that goes into the culture shift as well. Okay, we have these processes, we have this way of doing things, we have this new technology, let's try to make it fit. And it's disruptive by nature, so that's likely not going to work. So I think the first thing you need to think about is, okay, how do I fundamentally disrupt how I am going about this if I'm going to leverage this new technology? So that's one. The second is use the power of the nonprofit network. One thing I love about working on innovative products at the Red Cross versus the private sector is that you can go to your experts at AWS, you can go to your experts across the room and say, hey, let's share some ideas. What best practices do you have? We don't have this air of competition among us that startups or private sector companies would face. And that's a really beautiful thing. Sharing. Met somebody from the Mexican Red Cross today. Amazing learning that we can have just in that small little meeting. So really leveraging this beautiful community that we've built of those who are in public service to share best practices among us.
Yeah, so it takes an ecosystem to actually deliver innovative technology. On our end, I try, we're a smaller nonprofit organization. We have limited resources, and we can't hire the latest and greatest, we can't hire the best who are out there, especially that now AWS HQ2 is right across the street from our building. So it's kind of hard to keep resources, in the field of AI and data analytics and so on. So what I try to do is build a team that is capable of understanding the technology, its fundamentals, and is also capable of managing our vendors and our partners. Like you, Michelle, we work with the AWS team in DC. We had a workshop not a long time ago, looked at the business problems that we have and how can we solve them with technology. So it's always, again, going back to what is the business problem that we're trying to solve, and we look at it from the customer perspective. Always at the center of everything we do is customer and delivering value to our customers, delivering value to our business. We look at it from a digital transformation perspective. It's called the customer, competition, innovation, data, and value. This is from the book, the Digital Transformation Playbook, which I would recommend for people to look at. And it's really very powerful in a sense that allows us to focus on really what matters, delivering value. Innovation is fairly inexpensive nowadays with having the AWS platform with all these amazing tools from AI to analytics, storage, and compute, etc., Lambda. So there are so many resources that are easy to actually apply. Again, all of which needs to be taken from the perspective of the business problem that we're trying to solve and making sure that we're actually, at the end of the day, delivering value to our customers. We look at it from what we call the triple bottom line, the social impact, that we're really delivering the impact that we want to deliver, and then looking at it from our financial perspective, being able to have the financial means to deliver that social impact. And we also have a lot of partners from the private sector and other organizations that support us, so we need to also make sure that we're delivering value to them as well. So we put all this together to really deliver innovation, but in very well-defined context.
You touched on something that I think is really important. So from where I sit in my role around the world, something that I can bring to the world is access to scarce resources in the form of technology. But everyone in this room has access to different scarce resources, whether it's capital, whether it's knowledge, whether it's a network. And the fact that everyone is here together is a form of a scarce resource. I'm curious how you would encourage everyone in this room and at the conference to work together to leverage that scarce resource together, and maybe an example or two of where that's worked for you.
I actually had a thought about your last question.
Okay, you can do that too.
So for example, we're an organization that wants to empower citizens. We're data-driven. We want to be innovative. We want to be on the front lines of conflicts and disasters. But we also, I think one of the biggest things that organizations have to keep in mind is having self-realization of what your limitations are. And part of the ways that you empower yourself as an organization is to connect. So for example, we have great partnerships with AWS, with UShahidi, with the UN, with our interns, our volunteers, people that donate in-kind support and services to us. And that's where our power lies, because we're not just focused, we're focused here. And then as our network grows, our power does too. And I think just realizing that as one organization, there's no way you can do it all and you don't know it all and you will have a lot of gaps. And the only way you can fix it is to reach out and to connect with people that don't know what you know, or know what you don't know.
You answered both questions in one answer. Good work. Other examples of something you learned from maybe another organization or a partner that was a force multiplier for you?
So no specific lessons about product, but one approach that I've found helpful is to look for proxies, not identical missions. So if your mission is animal-based, right, you're focused on the alleviation of suffering for animals, you wouldn't necessarily say, oh, I would only look for other organizations that have that exact focus as well. It's what organizations have similar problems, right? Is it a customer engagement problem? Who's doing that really well and who would love to partner with me and have a conversation? Or what technology, who's doing AI really well? So thinking outside the box of who may be a good person to have a conversation with, and not be scared to reach out to your technology partners to see what recommendations they have as well, because if anybody is the center of the network, it would be somebody like Amazon, right? Because they sit here and the matrix of customers that they work with is a web around them. So leveraging that resource to be able to identify who are the people who are in the same boat, who has knowledge to share, who could benefit from the knowledge that you have. So being very intentional and smart about your networking there. And you'd be surprised how willing folks are to share that knowledge with you.
Yeah, so looking at the audience here, a lot of people here are much younger than our customers. But I'll share some facts with you. It might not be that interesting, but about 80% of older adults are on the wrong Medicare plan. People think that Medicare is for free, and you can have access to all the healthcare you want, and it's basically simple. You just sign up and you're good to go, all of which is not true. So 80% of older Americans are on the wrong plan, and that's a big problem from a health perspective and from a financial perspective. And so we wanted to tackle this problem. How do we solve it? And clearly, we have lots of data internally we've collected over the years about our customers. We know, we know their income, their age, their in some cases even their health situation, etc. And a lot of this data can help us actually predict what would be a good Medicare plan, what it would be for them as an individual. But we know also we have our own limited resources, that we don't have the people who can actually write the algorithms and be able to predict what would be the best for our customers. And so we had to team up with other organizations. We had to team up with the startup companies that had the resources, had the interest. And so we're sharing some of our data, obviously anonymized under very strict conditions, that protecting the privacy of our customers. And so that sort of opened up the door for us to really try and solve this problem. Part of, the problem is, it's when you look at it, it's at multi-levels. It's not just one or two. Solving the problem by itself and coming up with a solution that says, okay, give me the following answer, the following 6 or 7 questions. I'll tell you which is the best plan for you based on tons of data that exists with Medicare and with the data that we have. But then how do you actually reach an older adult and you tell them, we can help you to actually select your plan? So another challenge that we face and we collaborate with other organizations on is the digital marketing channel. The funnel is actually how do we communicate with older adults on Facebook, on YouTube. Older adults spend 4 to 6 hours watching either TV or videos on YouTube, or some of them are on social media, on Facebook specifically. So trying to target them and figuring out where they are, when they are, and delivering those messages and trying to encourage them to come to our products and engage them to be able to solve this really big problem.
That's good. I know we have a few minutes left. Why don't we open it up for questions in case there's any for the panel, and if not, we can continue the discussion. Anybody have any questions? Yes. Gentlemen, I'm going to turn my mic off since I think you and I are on the same channel.
All right, so didn't actually have a question, but now I do. So how would you think about expanding and thinking about a broader impact? Like, what would you think in, like, if you had access to all the technology and let's say you don't already, like, how would you want to see yourself in, like, getting bigger? Or, like, what is getting bigger to you? Is it more about the impact? Is it more about being accessible everywhere? Or what does it mean for your individual organizations?
Social impact, absolutely. That's why we exist. That's our mission. That's our vision. It's when we look at it, I'll give you some interesting numbers. So there are 72 million older adults in the U.S. More than half of them have less than $30,000 in savings. 80-something% of them have at least one chronic disease. So people are living longer and having less savings. And you know, we as nonprofits, why do we exist? Because the private sector is not doing what we do, and the government is not doing what we do. We have this niche where we jump in and fill in this gap, and we exist because we want to fill this gap of helping people live a better life and live a healthy and, in our case, wealthy older life. So that is the driving factor. We look at it, our big, hairy, audacious goal, the BHAG, is to help 40 million people live a better life by 2030. So this is the starting point. This is the North Star for us, and this is why we exist, and this is what we do. Of course, then you start from that point, and then you look at, from my perspective as the CIO and a technologist, how can I leverage technology to deliver this kind of scale? And obviously, 40 million, technology is at the heart of everything we do.
So riffing off of that, oh, can you stop me? Riffing off of that, I think it is very specific to the organization that you're working with, but it should not be different than any other goal that you would have within that organization. So if we had unlimited resources to do whatever we want with technology, what a beautiful situation to be in. Let's take AI as a use case. So typically when you think of AI and the benefits that it would bring to an org, private sector, nonprofit, regardless, it's typically for revenue generation or cost reduction, so spreading out the margins there. At the innovation team at the Red Cross, the way we think about it is, yes, we think about, okay, can I automate a task away that is not necessary for a human being to be focusing on, so they can then use that blood, sweat, and tears towards something more impactful. We have that same thought processes that any other organization would have, but our MO is to drive forward the humanitarian mission. So we have the same KPIs, the same metrics, the same measures for success that any volunteer or staff member out in the field would also have. And that's very difficult to do in a nonprofit setting. How do you measure impact? How do you measure success? And then how do you apply that to an innovation team? It's tricky, right? But that's what we're driving toward, and that's something that keeps us rooted in our work every day, despite the fact that we're playing with all of these fun, new, shiny objects.
For Humanitarian Tracker, I always want to picture myself in the shoes of whoever it is that I want to help, I want to empower, I want to elevate their voice, and walk backwards basically from that. And if my technology, a win for me is that my technology and what the tools that we're using and the projects we're carrying is actually making a difference in the life of the individual that I had in mind, in the communities that were affected by conflict, in a community that had a disease outbreak, in the child who's trying to go to school. And that, I think, is more impactful for our organization and organizations that do this type of work than to grow and scale when, say you grow and you scale and no one's using your technology or it's not being used properly. I think going back to your mission and really staying true to the people that you had in mind when you started working or you created something is always key.
Am I on? Okay, great. So we're coming up on time. Maybe what I'll do is just ask each of you to leave the audience with something that you'd like them to take away either from the show or about your organization or a best practice that you think would be valuable to them when they leave tomorrow or the next day to go put into practice.
There's no such thing as too small to be innovative, right? The Red Cross is able to stand up an entire innovation team because of our size and scale, sure, right? But that's not the ticket. Organizations of any size are able to be disruptive at any level, whether that's an application of a technology that's mature, that's already available to them, or starting to, dab their fingers in emerging technologies as well. So having the gumption, the bravery to think, okay, how can I disrupt what I'm doing to better employ our mission, and not necessarily think within the confines of what you've already been doing.
So from my perspective, it would be looking at it always from the lens of the people that we serve, to your point, and it's about the people. We exist because of the people that we are serving. So looking at it from, we call it the customer perspective, so that's really essential. And probably the other point is to take calculated risks and figuring out how to do that. We are, as I said earlier, we tend to be risk averse, but to really innovate, we need to take some risks.
I would say kill self-doubt. Whether you're an intern or a CEO, everybody has those days where they're doubting if they're in the right place. Could they do this? Should I reach out to this person? Is this partnership okay? And I think that making a practice and a habit of just killing it and going forward is a good thing. And I want to leave you with our global action mosaic and really a call to action. If you are doing work that is around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I really invite you to map it at globalactionmosaic.org and be part of our community.
That's great. Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you to the audience for investing the time. The panelists will be around the rest of the day today. Please reach out and connect with them. I know they have a lot to share. Also, thank you, everyone. Let's join with me in thanking the panelists for showing up.